Let's go live to Brisbane and check in with Anna Rawlings. It's been a mostly peaceful protest there, Anna, today. How has it been in the later parts?
Louise, the protest has finished here. There's just a couple of hundred people left, despite there being reports of 30,000 attending the march today. Now, there were a couple of incidents a little later on towards the end of the march. The crowd stopped briefly at Southbank Police Station there. They had threatened not to move on unless the officer in charge came out with an Aboriginal flag. We also saw a small group graffiti and actually tag the building with "No justice, no peace." The police did take notes and take photos, but they chose not to physically intervene there. In another incident, as the crowds were beginning to disperse and the splinter groups were walking away, a member of one of those smaller groups, a man actually ran towards a police car. He began to bang on the bonnet. He jumped on the roof. Other people were calling for him to come back. He was eventually chased by police nearby. He was detained, but he wasn't arrested. So aside from those incidents, it has been a largely peaceful protest. It's what attendees and organisers had said. They didn't want there to be any sort of violence. They wanted their message to be able to be heard. Now, after the crowd marched through the city's streets, starting from King George Square and walking through the city over Victoria Bridge to over here in Southbank, we've now heard from people who have addressed the crowd. There's been some emotional speeches. Let's take a listen.
423 or 33, they say, of deaths and custody in our Aboriginal community, black community, of the Arajara Aboriginal community right throughout Australia, Arajara, the Palmanyanka mob, all our bloodlines, killed, murdered, criminal, insane by this society to let the lawyers and the barristers allow this to happen.
So we can hear the emotion there. We did hear from other organisers, and there's been many recounts of stories of loss, one in particular being Cameron Doomadgee. He was a Palm Island Indigenous man who died during riots. He had severe injuries while in police custody, allegedly inflicted by a police officer. So there's also been calls, of course, for justice on a wider level for Indigenous deaths in custody, with over 400 over the past 20 years or so. So police had been prepared for things to be heightened. They had been concerned as well that there may have been agitators who would use the protest as a bit of a veil, so for any sort of violent activity. But aside from those isolated incidents I mentioned, it has been largely peaceful. Of course, another concern from authorities had been social distancing, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic. The Deputy Premier had encouraged people to wear masks if possible. The Premier had encouraged people to stay at home and show their support online, but of course, as we saw, many thousands turned out. They were, though, making an effort to wear face masks and hand out hand sanitizer, doing their best to be as socially distant as possible in crowds the size that we saw today.
Anna Rawlings there live in Brisbane. Thank you very much for the update.